What will happen to you over the next 365 days? Or maybe for some of you, the more appropriate question is, what will you create through purposeful intent over the next 12 months? Allow me this hypothetical. Imagine, if you will, that the next 365 days are exclusively your own. No obligations, no children, spouse, no job, no school. The time is exclusively yours to do with what you would please. At the same time, your income will not change. So whatever income you have today, if you're receiving a paycheck, that paycheck will continue and you won't have to do any work for it. Your health will stay the same, there'll be no other limitations. So just in your own mind, what would you do with 365 days of free time? I've had the opportunity to ask this question in many different settings to many different people. And I've been surprised by the fact that almost to the person, the answer comes back, I would travel. And maybe several of you have also come up with that same answer. I love to travel, so at the outset, that made perfect sense to me. But then, when everybody answered that way, I had to dig in a little bit deeper. I did a little research, and it turns out that in 2012, only 5% of Americans traveled internationally. So I've been trying to reconcile this difference in my head. 5% of people actually do it, but 100% say they want to. Is it really just the lack of time that prevents 95% of Americans from traveling? Or is it something else? The data suggests to me that even with the parameters that I've set, the free time, same income, that people probably wouldn't be doing the traveling. So it still leaves the question in my head, what would they do? This has become more than just a theoretical exercise for me. Last week, I was laid off from my job of 12 years. And I now find myself in the enviable position of considering taking a full year off. A chance to recharge my batteries, to rethink my professional choices. And yeah, it's very exciting to think about what that might be, but it's also somewhat terrifying. What happens if at the end of that 12 months, I'm no longer marketable, that I can't find another job? Or what happens if, even worse, I get to the end of that period of time and I haven't accomplished anything, that I wasted an entire year? But what if that becomes a transformative experience? What if I discover, what if I create, what if I identify new passions? What if I'm able to create experiences that provide a creative outlet for me? And what if I'm able to actually profoundly influence people's lives in a way that wouldn't be possible in the restrictions of a 9-to-5 job? These are the kinds of things that run through my head as I'm considering what this option might be. The other thing it's allowed me to do is to think about my history. Over the last 25 plus years of contiguous work experience, I've identified the fact that there's two things that have driven my choices. One of those is do that which I do well. I have a natural proclivity for numbers and analysis. So I've had a variety of jobs that have allowed me to exploit what that is or leverage that skill. The other thing is, I always wanted to make more money than it took for me to simply survive. I have a graduate degree in finance that's opened several doors for me and allowed me to create that savings. So in summary, I've chosen jobs simply those which are easy or those which make money. And while those two achieve the objectives that they were intended to do, they really are sort of less than satisfying. I mean, how many spreadsheets can you produce? How many TPS reports can you produce? And what value do they hold besides that single moment in time under which that decision is made, and then they become obsolete right after that? As I stand on the precipice of this decision, something else keeps running through my mind. And that is, why didn't I make this decision for myself a while back? Why did I have to wait for an employer to create that environment, to create that opportunity for me? And I think it's really because it was just simple, it was easy. I allowed life to happen to me. But I've now been given an opportunity to create a different outcome, to make that feel differently. So in the week that I've had, I've created a few priorities in my head. I think most of you know I have an intention of completing an Ironman triathlon. So it frees up some time for that to happen. I've always wanted to play a musical instrument. I've wanted to learn, become fluent in a foreign language. And I've always wanted to do work that actually had a social benefit rather than simply an economic one. And while this is the plan at this point, I've had 7 days to create it. It is actually my hope that this gets blown completely out of the water after the first couple months. That the opportunity to experience and do different things and have different perspectives on things that I never would have had in my existing role will change the way that I think about things and will change how that all plays out. So let me roll this all back to the very beginning. I've shared with you a bit about my hopes, my fears, my analysis around what it means to have this kind of free time. And I asked you all the question at the outset. If you were in a position where you had nothing but free time and the money stays the same, what would you do with your time? Let me change that up just a little bit. Given your current life situation, what will you do with your next 365 days?